The intersection. On a cold Tuesday morning in 2021, a 27-year-old woman named Elena Vargas stood at an empty intersection on her way to work. Her phone buzzed. She reached into her pocket to answer it. And in that 1 second, that single, thoughtless moment, her life would change forever. Because as her fingers brushed the phone's screen, something flashed in her peripheral vision. And by the time she looked up, it was already too late. Before we get into this story, if you love true stories that make you question fate, awareness, and the moments that change everything, stay with me till the end. Because this story, it's going to stick with you long after it's over. The ordinary morning. Elena was the kind of person who believed in small routines. Same route. Same coffee. Same playlist. She worked at a dental clinic downtown, just 20 minutes from her apartment in Mesa, Arizona. She liked quiet mornings, the kind where the streets were still wet from overnight rain and the city hadn't fully woken up. That morning, January 12, 2021, started like any other. She slipped on her jacket, locked the door, and jogged down to her car. Nothing unusual. Nothing strange. But around 7:34 a.m., traffic cameras would record her standing alone at the intersection of Ellsworth and Dana Avenue, waiting for the light to change. And that's when everything began to unravel. The choice. Elena's light turned green. She looked left, then right, no cars. She stepped off the curb. But just as she crossed the halfway point, her phone vibrated again. She glanced down, a text from her younger brother, Diego. It read, "Hey, are you still coming to Mom's tonight? I need to tell you something." That was it. Simple. But in that brief second, the moment she looked down, a delivery van came barreling through the red light from the opposite lane. The van's dashcam would later show the driver slamming the brakes, tires screeching, horn blaring. And in the blurred frame before impact, Elena looked up. The blink. Everything after that is a blur, literally. Witnesses said the van swerved violently, clipping the curb before flipping onto its side. But when emergency responders arrived, something didn't make sense. The van's entire front bumper was crushed. But Elena wasn't under it. In fact, she wasn't anywhere near the point of impact. She was found 32 feet away, sitting upright on the ground, disoriented, mumbling something over and over. "He pushed me." Paramedics thought she meant another pedestrian, maybe someone had yanked her back. But dashcam footage, high resolution, frame by frame, showed no one else on that intersection with her. Not a single shadow. Not a single body. Just Elena. And yet, she had a visible bruise across her shoulder that perfectly matched a human handprint. The investigation. At first, police chalked it up to confusion, shock, adrenaline, trauma. But as they interviewed Elena later that night at the hospital, her story stayed the same. She said she felt a hand shove her backward just before the van hit. And she was certain she heard a voice. It wasn't loud, just 3 words. "Not this time." The investigating officer, Detective Laura Haynes, made a note of it but didn't think much else. Until she reviewed the dashcam footage herself. When the video slowed down to 1/16th speed. At the exact frame before the impact. There was a flicker of motion behind Elena. A faint outline. Like the shimmer of heat rising off asphalt. And then, she falls backward, hard, exactly as the van rushes by. But what chilled Haynes wasn't the blur itself. It was the reflection on the van's chrome grille as it passed. Because for a split second, it showed 2 figures standing there. Elena, and another silhouette just behind her. The stranger. 3 days later, Elena went back to the intersection. She said she wanted to see it in daylight, to convince herself it was real, that it hadn't just been some fluke of her mind. But as she stood there, something caught her eye. Across the street, leaning against a lamppost, was a man. Tall, wearing an old denim jacket. He was watching her, not with curiosity, but with recognition. Like he knew her. Elena blinked, startled. The man smiled, then crossed the street, heading straight toward her. But before he reached the curb, a city bus passed between them. And when it moved on, the man was gone. Security footage from a nearby gas station later confirmed what she saw, or didn't. The camera captured her looking across the street. But there was no man in the frame. The connection. That night, Elena told her brother Diego what happened. He froze. He asked her to repeat what the man was wearing. Denim jacket. Gray hoodie. Kind of worn out. Diego's eyes filled with tears. He walked to the kitchen drawer, pulled out an old photo, and handed it to her. It was their father. Taken in 2012, the year he died in a highway accident. He was wearing the same denim jacket. Elena stared at the photo, trembling. Her father had been killed by a delivery truck that ran a red light. Same intersection. Same company. 9 years earlier. The impossible footage. Detective Haynes, now obsessed, decided to review the dashcam again. She enhanced the reflected image in the van's bumper using forensic software. The second figure's face, though blurred, had distinguishable outlines. Male. Mid-40s. And wearing a denim jacket. Haynes didn't tell Elena right away. Instead, she cross-checked the delivery van's black box data. And discovered something inexplicable. The van's internal system showed a speed drop from 72 miles per hour to 0. In less than 0.3 seconds. No skid marks could explain it. No collision physics could justify it. It was as if, for a split second, time paused. The haunting. Over the next few days, Elena couldn't shake the feeling that she was being watched. Her phone would light up randomly, no notification. At night, she'd wake up to music playing from her dad's old radio, static-filled, cycling through AM channels that hadn't worked in years. One night, she heard a voice through the static. Low. Familiar. It said, "You weren't supposed to die there." She screamed. The radio fell off the counter. When she picked it up again, it was unplugged. The choice. Elena went back to the site one last time, to leave flowers at the corner where the accident had happened. It was dawn, just before sunrise. She whispered a prayer, thanked whoever had saved her, and turned to go. Then her phone rang. Caller ID, unknown. She hesitated. Answered. A man's voice, calm, soft, said, "Next time, don't look down." Then the line went dead. Elena dropped her phone. The screen flickered once, and displayed a text notification. It was the same message from her brother Diego. Time-stamped 1 minute in the future. If you think you know what's happening here, keep watching. Because what Elena would discover next would leave investigators questioning what it means to cheat death, and whether sometimes, something beyond us decides when it's time, and when it isn't. The unknown variable. A few months later, Elena's story hit local news. Woman survives fatal crash, claims she was pushed by unseen rescuer. It became a viral phenomenon. Skeptics called it coincidence. Scientists called it misperception. But people who'd lost loved ones saw something deeper. A message. Hundreds began visiting that same intersection. Some swore they felt a chill when they stepped onto the crosswalk. A few even claimed to hear whispers through passing traffic. And one eyewitness, a retired cop, said that just before dawn, he saw a man in a denim jacket standing under the traffic light. When he approached to talk to him, the man looked up and vanished. The investigator's discovery. Detective Haynes retired later that year. Before she left, she boxed up all her old files. But she kept one piece, a high-resolution still from the dashcam footage. She pinned it on her wall at home. And sometimes, late at night, when the light hit it just right, she swore she could see the second figure a little clearer than before. And when she looked closely, she realized he wasn't looking at Elena. He was looking straight into the camera. To this day, the intersection at Ellsworth and Dana remains one of the most accident-prone areas in Mesa. City workers repaint the crosswalk every year, but there's always one faint mark that never fades. A handprint. Pressed into the asphalt. As if someone tried to reach out and change fate. If you believe some choices are just coincidences, think again. Because we'll uncover the mysterious connection between Elena's survival and a decades-old case that suggests time might not save us, it might correct us. Make sure you follow this story to the end. What happens next will make you question everything you believe about destiny, death, and the power of a single choice. Echoes in the static. Last time, we learned how Elena Vargas was pulled away from death by something, or someone, unseen. Dashcam footage showed a second figure. A denim jacket. A whisper that said, "Not this time." And as the story spread, people began asking the same question Elena couldn't stop asking herself. Who, or what, saved her? The visitor. 2 weeks after the accident, Elena returned to work part-time. Her co-workers welcomed her with flowers and cautious smiles, but there was an edge in the air. Everyone had seen the viral video. That afternoon, as she finished paperwork, a stranger stepped into the clinic lobby. He was in his 40s, well-dressed, carrying a small folder. "Miss Vargas?" "Yes?" "I'm Dr. Rowan Miles, independent researcher. I study near-death experiences." Elena hesitated. "You're here about that video?" He nodded. "I've reviewed the footage. What you described isn't unique, but your timing is." He opened the folder. Inside were grainy black and white photos, traffic intersections, collapsed bridges, disaster sites. In each, a faint figure, always near the edge of tragedy. Sometimes blurred. Sometimes clear enough to show a denim jacket. Patterns. Rowan explained that for over 20 years, similar incidents had been documented worldwide, moments where someone was pushed, pulled, or warned seconds before disaster. Most dismissed them as coincidence. But Rowan had spent his career finding the pattern. He called it the resonance theory. Certain events echo through time. When a trauma repeats, a crash, an accident, the energy of the first moment can manifest again. Sometimes as sound, sometimes as light. Rarely, as a presence. Elena tried to laugh it off. "You're saying, my dad's death echoed?" Rowan shrugged gently. "I'm saying your survival might not be random." He slid one last photo across the table. It was dated January 12, 2021. Taken by a cyclist's helmet cam from 2 blocks away. In the distant intersection, the crash, the van, the chaos. And a blur on the sidewalk, behind Elena. Rowan zoomed in. The face was faint, but undeniably male. And wearing the same jacket her father owned. Elena's hands trembled. "How is that possible?" Rowan simply said, "That's what we're going to find out." The recording. That night, Elena plugged her phone into her laptop to back up photos from the accident day. One unnamed audio file appeared, time-stamped 7:36 a.m., the exact minute of the crash. She hadn't recorded anything. Still, she pressed play. Static. Then breathing. A man's voice whispered, "Move." Followed by another whisper, layered beneath it, herself, gasping. Then a crash, the sound of metal, and silence. When she replayed it, the voice was gone. Just static. She slammed the laptop shut and stared at her reflection in the dark screen. For a heartbeat, she swore someone else blinked. The detective returns. Detective Laura Haynes hadn't stopped thinking about that second figure either. Officially, the case was closed as driver negligence with anomalous visual artifact. Unofficially, she knew something didn't add up. She called Elena and Rowan to meet at the precinct. "I ran the license plate of that delivery van," Haynes began. "The company went bankrupt 3 months after your dad's crash. Guess why?" Rowan frowned. "Let me guess, another accident." Haynes nodded. "Same model of van. Same malfunctioning brake line. And the mechanic who reported the issue was named Miguel Vargas, your father." Elena felt the room spin. My dad reported the defect? Haynes, yes. The report was buried. The recall never happened. Meaning, if the company had listened, both crashes might have been prevented. Elena's voice cracked. He tried to stop it, and couldn't. Rowan whispered, maybe this time, he did. If you're still watching, what happens next will challenge everything you think about time, justice, and love that refuses to die. Stay with me, because we're about to uncover evidence that suggests death might not be the end of a story, but the rewriting of one. The files. Rowan convinced Haynes to grant access to archived police footage from 2012, the original crash. On screen, the wreckage was almost identical, same intersection, same make of van, same impact angle. At the 007 mark, smoke filled the lens. But through the haze, a figure stumbled into view. Paramedics later confirmed it was Miguel Vargas. He was alive for just 3 minutes after impact. And in those final seconds, the camera mic picked up his last words. Tell her to look up. Haynes paused the video. Look up. 9 years later, Elena had survived because she did, too late to step back, but just in time for someone else to push her. Rowan leaned forward. Maybe he finally finished the message. The experiments. Rowan invited Elena to his research lab, a converted observatory lined with sensors and old analog radios. He explained his next step, to recreate the intersection's energy signature. He replayed the audio file Elena had found. The static pulsed through the room. On the oscilloscope, a waveform appeared, erratic, human-like. Then, a voice formed within the noise. Elena. The lights flickered. Monitors flashed. And in the corner of the room, one of the analog radios, unplugged, clicked on. From its speaker came a faint male whisper. Not this time. Elena screamed. When Rowan replayed the tape seconds later, the whisper was gone, replaced by silence. The shadow in the glass. That night, Elena couldn't sleep. Rain tapped against her window. She sat at her kitchen table, scrolling through news comments calling her crazy, attention-seeking, haunted. She opened her front camera, just to prove to herself she was okay. For a split second, her reflection smiled back. A fraction after she did. Behind her, in the window glass, a silhouette stood at the crosswalk. Denim jacket. She spun around. Nothing but rain and streetlight. Haynes' dream. Detective Haynes, meanwhile, started having nightmares. In each one, she was standing in traffic, sirens screaming. Someone yelled, "Move." She always woke before impact. One night, she woke to find muddy footprints on her bedroom floor, leading from the door to her bedside table. On it lay a photo she'd never seen before, Elena, standing at the intersection, smiling. In the background, her own younger self, from 9 years ago, investigating Miguel's crash. The convergence. Rowan called both women back to his lab. I've been comparing timestamps, he said. The moment Elena was saved, 7:36 a.m., January 12, 2021, matches to the minute the van struck her father in 2012, adjusted for leap years. He spread photos on the table, 2 crashes, 9 years apart. Whatever this is, it loops on an exact interval. He pointed to the waveform again. It's as if the first event left a temporal scar, and when the same condition repeated, the echo tried to correct it. Haynes exhaled. You're saying, her father's death created a feedback loop through time? Rowan nodded. And maybe love is the frequency that carried it. Elena whispered, he didn't want me to go the same way. Her voice trembled. He broke time, to save me. The warning. Before they could respond, every monitor in the lab flickered. A new waveform emerged, stronger, clearer. The speakers screamed feedback, then a voice cut through. You changed it. Now it changes you. The power went out. When the lights returned, the waveform was gone. But the lab clock had frozen at 7 hours and 36 minutes. From that night on, time became unpredictable for Elena Vargas. She'd wake to find her watch hours ahead, her coffee still steaming. People swore they'd seen her places she'd never been. Stay with me, we'll uncover how altering one split-second choice can trigger consequences far beyond one life. And why the line between guardian and ghost might be thinner than we ever imagined. Stay with this story. What happens next isn't just about survival. It's about the price of being saved. The haunting decision. Calm, deliberate tone, storyteller's voice soft but heavy, tension building in every sentence. By the third day after the crash, Daniel was alive. But not the same. Something inside him had shifted, not just emotionally, but physically. He told the doctors he could still feel the other man's heartbeat. He said when he closed his eyes, he saw flashes of a highway that wasn't the one he crashed on. And in those visions, he wasn't driving his own car. He was in the other one. The vision. It started at 2:13 a.m. on a Tuesday night. Daniel woke up in the hospital to a high-pitched tone in his ears, followed by the unmistakable sound of metal grinding, that same sound from the crash. Only this time, he wasn't behind the wheel. He was watching from above. In his vision, the other man, the one who died, was screaming his name. Daniel! Don't do it! Then the vision cut to black. When Daniel woke, the hospital monitor was flatlining. His heart had stopped for 27 seconds. When they revived him, he whispered, "He's still here." The visitor. The next morning, a woman came to visit Daniel. She introduced herself as Dr. Elise Hartman, a trauma psychologist who worked with survivors of near-death experiences. Elise had that kind of calm voice that made you feel safe instantly. But when Daniel told her what he'd seen, and how real it felt, she didn't dismiss it. Instead, she said something strange. "You're not the first person from that road who said that." Daniel blinked. "What do you mean?" Elise leaned closer. "Old Route 39, we've had 4 accidents there this year alone. And every survivor described seeing the same man, moments before impact." Daniel froze. Because he knew exactly who she was talking about. The photos. Later that night, after Elise left, Daniel's mother brought him his phone. He scrolled through his photo gallery, trying to piece together what had really happened before the crash. There were random pictures, his dog, his sister's graduation, some blurry photos of the rain that night. But then, one photo stopped him cold. It was a picture he didn't take. Timestamped 9:42 p.m., 5 minutes before the crash. It showed his dashboard, and in the reflection of the windshield, a man standing in the middle of the road. His eyes glowing faintly white. Daniel dropped the phone. He'd seen that face before. It was the same face from his visions. The man in the other car. The confession. Elise came back the next day. Daniel showed her the photo, his hands shaking. She stared at it for a long time, then quietly said, "That man's name was Michael Rains. He died on that road in 1997. Same curve. Same conditions. Same time of night." Daniel felt his stomach drop. "That's not possible." "I've seen the reports," Elise said softly. "And the last thing Michael said before he died was, tell him not to make the turn." Daniel didn't understand. "Tell who?" Elise met his eyes. "We don't know." The loop. That night, Daniel couldn't sleep. Every time he closed his eyes, he saw headlights, his, and another set coming straight for him. Only this time, he saw 2 Daniels in the car. One braked. One didn't. And then everything went white. When he woke up again, it was morning. He was drenched in sweat, but something new was different. His hospital bracelet was gone. In its place, a paper tag tied around his wrist. It said, "Trauma Ward, Patient, Michael Rains." He blinked, looked again, and it was gone. But when he looked out the hospital window, parked in the lot below, was a car. A 1997 Honda Civic. Old. Rusted. Exactly like the one from his dreams. The tunnel road. Elise found Daniel in the hallway later that day. He was standing by the window, staring down at the Civic. "You see it too," he said quietly. Elise nodded. "I've seen it every time one of my patients starts dreaming of Route 39. And every time, one of them disappears." Daniel turned to her, pale. "What do you mean disappears?" "They go back," she whispered. "They drive that road again, trying to change what happened. But the road doesn't let them leave. The choice." That night, Daniel made his decision. He discharged himself against medical advice. Drove home. Sat in silence. At 11:58 p.m., he picked up his car keys and whispered, "If I'm the reason he died, then I'm going to fix it." He got in his car and started driving toward Route 39. If you've made it this far, you need to hear this, because what Daniel did next has never been explained. And when police found his car, the evidence they discovered inside it didn't belong to this world. Stay with me. You'll see why this story became one of the most baffling true-life mysteries in modern history. The return to Route 39. It was pouring again that night. Rain smearing against his windshield like static. The highway empty except for the faint reflection of his own headlights. When Daniel reached the curve, the exact spot where it happened, his phone started ringing. "Unknown number." He answered. A man's voice said, "Don't make the turn." Then the line went dead. Daniel hit the brakes hard, the car skidding sideways, and for a split second, he saw another vehicle right beside him. Same make. Same model. Same driver. Himself. Then, impact. Glass shattered. The world went black. The aftermath. The next morning, police found Daniel's car on the side of Route 39. Driver's seat empty. Airbags deployed. No blood. No sign of anyone injured. But what made no sense was the second set of tire tracks beside his. They were fresh, identical, and they ended abruptly at the cliff's edge. And in the mud near the wreck was a single photograph. It showed Daniel standing in the rain, looking straight at the camera. Timestamped 3 minutes after the crash. Elise received a voicemail that same morning. A deep male voice whispering, "Tell her I made the right choice." The number was untraceable. But when investigators replayed the tape through enhanced audio, there was another faint sound in the background. The echo of screeching tires. And then silence. The unraveling. 3 days after Daniel's disappearance, Route 39 was closed to the public. The official report called it a precautionary closure due to unstable ground. But those who lived nearby knew the real reason: another driver had gone missing at the same curve. And that driver was Daniel. The phone call. Dr. Elise Hartman was sitting in her office, half asleep at her desk, when her phone rang. Private number. The voice on the other end was trembling. "Is this Dr. Hartman?" "Yes. Who is this?" I think I found something you need to see." The caller identified himself as Deputy Mark Jensen, one of the officers stationed on Route 39 the night Daniel vanished. He told her they'd found something strange inside the wrecked car that wasn't listed in the official report. Something they weren't supposed to talk about. Elise drove there immediately. The car. When she arrived, Daniel's car was locked inside a restricted storage bay. It was almost unrecognizable, windshield shattered, hood twisted like paper. But the strangest part was the smell. Cold air. Metallic. Almost electrical. Jensen pointed a flashlight at the driver's seat. "This wasn't here before," he said. There, pressed into the seatbelt, was a faint black handprint, not greasy, not dirty, almost burned into the fabric. It looked human, but too long. The fingers stretched unnaturally. Then Jensen handed Elise a small evidence bag. Inside it was a cassette tape, found wedged under the passenger seat. The label read simply, "Play me." The tape. Back at her office, Elise locked the door and inserted the tape into an old player. For a few seconds, just static. Then, Daniel's voice. If you're hearing this, it means I made it back there. I know how insane that sounds, but the man on that road, he wasn't trying to hurt me. He was trying to warn me. His breathing was uneven, panicked. There's a place between seconds. When time slows, just before the crash, you can choose. That's where he was stuck. And now, I think I am too. A faint echo followed, like two voices speaking the same words milliseconds apart. Then silence. Then, the sound of tires screeching. Followed by Daniel whispering, "Tell Elise I saw him again, and he forgave me." The tape cut off abruptly. The research. Elise couldn't sleep after that. She spent the next 48 hours going through old case files, all patients who'd survived crashes. On Route 39. 9 of them, in total. Every one of them described the same thing. A split-second vision before impact. A voice calling their name. And a second version of themselves begging them not to turn. But what made her blood run cold was one of the earliest reports. Filed in 1997, by a man named Dr. Aaron Hartman. Her father. The father's file. Elise drove to her family home that night, desperate for answers. The house was old, mostly untouched since her father's death 10 years earlier. She found his research journals buried in a dusty trunk in the attic. Inside, dozens of handwritten notes about Route 39. He'd been studying what he called temporal folds, small rips in the perception of time that occur in moments of trauma or imminent death. One passage stood out. The fold opens in the instant before impact. Some see it as a flash, others as a person. Those who cross it never fully return, their reflection remains trapped. Elise turned the page. A photograph fell out. It showed a man standing by Route 39. With the same long, burned-looking handprint on his shoulder. And in the corner of the photo, scrawled in her father's handwriting, were the words, "Do not let them meet." The encounter. That night, Elise was driving back to the city when her car radio began to crackle. The station flickered, then cut to static. A voice came through. Not just any voice. Daniel's. "Elise, don't go near the road." She froze. "Daniel? How, where are you?" "It's not a road," he said softly. "It's a mirror." The call ended with the same screech of metal she'd heard on the tape. She pulled over, heart racing, hands trembling on the steering wheel. In the rearview mirror, for just a second, she saw movement. Her own reflection. But the face staring back wasn't hers. It was her father's. The hidden map. When Elise returned to her office, she noticed the envelope that had fallen out of her father's journal earlier. Inside was a folded map of Route 39. But there was something strange about it, a second, fainter road drawn beneath the printed one. It followed the same curve but looped back on itself, forming an almost perfect figure 8. At the crossing point of the two lines, her father had written one word. Choice. And below it. Once you see both roads, you can never unsee them. Elise realized what it meant. Daniel hadn't just crashed, he'd intersected the fold. The breaking point. At 11:47 p.m., she couldn't resist anymore. She got into her car and drove to Route 39. The sky was black and starless. Her headlights sliced through the fog like blades. As she neared the curve, her hands began to shake, the steering wheel vibrating faintly, as if something unseen was pulling against her. Then, for a split second, she saw another car up ahead. Same make. Same model. Inside, a woman driving, her. The two cars were about to collide. Elise slammed the brakes, screamed. And suddenly everything went silent. If you're still here, what happens next will completely change what you think the story is about. Because when Elise opens her eyes, she won't be in her car anymore. And the truth she's about to uncover will explain exactly what Daniel saw that night. Stay until the end, this next part is where the impossible becomes real. The other side. When Elise opened her eyes, the first thing she noticed was the stillness. No rain. No sound. Her car was gone. She stood in the middle of the road, but it looked different. The asphalt was cracked, the trees brittle and gray, as if decades had passed. And there, a few feet away, stood Daniel. He looked alive. Normal. Calm. "You found it," he said softly. "The fold." Elise could barely speak. "Where are we?" "Between seconds," he whispered. "The place where choices echo. Every time someone hesitates between life and death, they open it again. The truth." Daniel explained that the man in the other car wasn't a ghost, he was a reflection of his own decision. The moment he'd brake to save another, the version of him that didn't brake had kept driving. On Route 39. 9 of them, in total. Every one of them described the same thing. A split-second vision before impact. A voice calling their name. And a second version of themselves begging them not to turn. But what made her blood run cold was one of the earliest reports. Filed in 1997, by a man named Dr. Elise Hartman. Her father. The father's file. Elise drove to her family home that night, desperate for answers. The house was old, mostly untouched since her father's death 10 years earlier. She found his research journals buried in a dusty trunk in the attic. Inside, dozens of handwritten notes about Route 39. He'd been studying what he called temporal folds, small rips in the perception of time that occur in moments of trauma or imminent death. One passage stood out. The fold opens in the instant before impact. Some see it as a flash, others as a person. Those who cross it never fully return, their reflection remains trapped. Elise turned the page. A photograph fell out. It showed a man standing by Route 39. With the same long, burned-looking handprint on his shoulder. And in the corner of the photo, scrawled in her father's handwriting, were the words, "Do not let them meet." The encounter. That night, Elise was driving back to the city when her car radio began to crackle. The station flickered, then cut to static. A voice came through. Not just any voice. Daniel's. "Elise, don't go near the road." She froze. "Daniel? How, where are you?" "It's not a road," he said softly. "It's a mirror." The call ended with the same screech of metal she'd heard on the tape. She pulled over, heart racing, hands trembling on the steering wheel. In the rearview mirror, for just a second, she saw movement. Her own reflection. But the face staring back wasn't hers. It was her father's. The hidden map. When Elise returned to her office, she noticed the envelope that had fallen out of her father's journal earlier. Inside was a folded map of Route 39. But there was something strange about it, a second, fainter road drawn beneath the printed one. It followed the same curve but looped back on itself, forming an almost perfect figure 8. At the crossing point of the two lines, her father had written one word. Choice. And below it. Once you see both roads, you can never unsee them. Elise realized what it meant. Daniel hadn't just crashed, he'd intersected the fold. The breaking point. At 11:47 p.m., she couldn't resist anymore. She got into her car and drove to Route 39. The sky was black and starless. Her headlights sliced through the fog like blades. As she neared the curve, her hands began to shake, the steering wheel vibrating faintly, as if something unseen was pulling against her. Then, for a split second, she saw another car up ahead. Same make. Same model. Inside, a woman driving, her. The two cars were about to collide. Elise slammed the brakes, screamed. And suddenly everything went silent. If you're still here, what happens next will completely change what you think the story is about. Because when Elise opens her eyes, she won't be in her car anymore. And the truth she's about to uncover will explain exactly what Daniel saw that night. Stay until the end, this next part is where the impossible becomes real. The other side. When Elise opened her eyes, the first thing she noticed was the stillness. No rain. No sound. Her car was gone. She stood in the middle of the road, but it looked different. The asphalt was cracked, the trees brittle and gray, as if decades had passed. And there, a few feet away, stood Daniel. He looked alive. Normal. Calm. "You found it," he said softly. "The fold." Elise could barely speak. "Where are we?" "Between seconds," he whispered. "The place where choices echo. Every time someone hesitates between life and death, they open it again. The truth." Daniel explained that the man in the other car wasn't a ghost, he was a reflection of his own decision. The moment he'd brake to save another, the version of him that didn't brake had kept driving. The experiment. In a series of voice notes, Dr. Elise Hartman described his experiment in chilling detail. "We theorized that at the threshold of trauma, the human consciousness splits into dual potential outcomes, survival and loss. Both real, both persistent. The intersection creates a feedback, a fold, where the two realities overlap momentarily. Then, one final recording." His voice broken, ragged. "It worked. I saw him. He looked just like me. But if both versions touch, if they recognize each other, it unravels the memory of the world that made them. The fold doesn't just capture time. It copies it." And then, one last line, whispered almost inaudibly. "If you're hearing this, Elise, you were never supposed to remember." The realization. Elise stumbled back, heart pounding. She opened Daniel's photo again, the one of the two of them together. Behind them, in the background, was a sign. Route 39 Construction, 1997. Her father hadn't met Daniel by accident. Daniel was part of the experiment. And Elise. She was the one who had been trapped in the fold all along. Every patient she'd treated. Every survivor she'd interviewed. Every echo of the same story. They weren't coincidences. They were repetitions. Time didn't move forward on Route 39. It looped. The final drive. At dawn, Elise got in her car and started driving. Not to escape. Not to solve anything. But to see it one last time. The road was quiet. Fog rolled across the asphalt like slow waves. When she reached the curve, she noticed something she'd never seen before, two sets of tire marks, fresh and parallel, vanishing into the mist. Her phone buzzed. Unknown number. She answered. "Elise?" Daniel's voice. Calm. Clear. "You made it back." She whispered, "Where are you?" "Right where I left you." "Is this real?" "It doesn't matter anymore." A pause. We all live in the moment between decision and consequence. The fold just shows us what that looks like. And then, the line went dead. The echo. Later that morning, a highway patrol officer found Elise's car parked safely on the shoulder of Route 39. Engine still running. Driver's seat empty. On the passenger seat was a single page torn from her father's journal. Scrawled in black ink were 6 words. "Every life is a split-second choice." And beneath that, a date, October 13th, 2025. The same day she vanished. The last recording. 2 weeks later, a digital file appeared in the trauma clinic's email inbox. No sender. No subject. Just a recording. The voice on the file was Elise's. "This isn't a story about death. It's about choice. Every time you make one turn, hesitate, pause, somewhere, another version of you keeps going. Maybe that's what déjà vu is. A moment where both of you look at each other, across that fold, and one whispers, 'Don't make the turn.' Then silence. And faintly, beneath it, 2 heartbeats, overlapping. Then one stops. If you made it this far, think about that. Every decision, every moment, could be the one that splits your story in two. So next time you're behind the wheel, or facing a choice that feels like it hangs between life and death, listen carefully. Because maybe, just maybe, Someone on the other side of the fold is whispering your name.